So bloating and gas is an issue that a lot of people deal with, but there are so many different root causes for this that it's hard to pinpoint which one of them is causing it. So one of the main reasons for bloating and gas is actually due to our gut bacteria. So normally we'll have a large amount of bacteria inside of our large intestine. And we can think of the large intestine as the deepest part of our intestinal tract. And it takes a few hours, it's estimated between 6 and 8, for food to actually migrate all the way through our digestive system and make it to the large intestine. And anything that's undigested, specifically undigested carbohydrates, can actually be digested by the bacteria in our large intestine. And some of the byproducts of this are gases and different compounds. Some can have beneficial effects and others can make us feel gassy or bloated. However, there is a phenomenon called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So before it gets to the large intestine, the food will pass through the small intestine. And sometimes these bacteria from the large intestine will actually migrate into the small intestine. And the small intestine is the site that we actually absorb the majority of our nutrients. But if we have an abundance of bacteria in our small intestine, they actually compete for these nutrients. And oftentimes these bacteria will actually absorb and digest the nutrients that we should have been digesting before we have the opportunity to digest them through the small intestine. Additionally, just like in the large intestine, these bacteria will actually produce gas as a byproduct. But it doesn't take nearly as long for the food that we eat to actually make it to the small intestine. It's estimated it takes between 1 and 4 hours. And I found this extremely helpful for actually finding the root cause of why someone may have gas or bloating. So let's say that you begin to produce gas and feel bloated pretty quickly after a meal in this 1 to 4 hour period. It's very likely that you may actually have some sort of small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And these bacteria are competing inside the small intestine for all the nutrients, and you'll notice the onset of gas and bloating fairly quickly after a meal. However, let's say that it takes between 6 and 8 hours for this gas and bloating to actually start manifesting. This means, lucky for you, you probably don't have any sort of bacterial overgrowth inside of the small intestine. However, for some reason, a lot of undigested food is passing through your small intestine and not getting absorbed and making it into the large intestine. And now there are a few root causes for this. One could be an inability to actually break down your food, typically due to low stomach acid. And the other thing is simply eating a lot of fiber. So fiber is fairly undigestible, at least in the small intestine, and we personally don't absorb it, but the bacteria in our intestines will absorb it, and they produce the same gas as a byproduct. And this is why fiber is kind of a trade-off. It may actually improve your digestion in some circumstances, however, it also may increase your gas, and this is why it may be good to find a happy medium if you find that after eating fiber, you begin to become a little bit bloated. And if you have this small intestinal overgrowth, you may actually be at a point where you could limit fiber intake in order to kind of limit the amount of resources getting to these bacteria. With that being said, these are just symptoms to tell you that you should probably look further into it. I don't think it's a good idea to just guess. I think it'd be a good idea that if you have these symptoms, to actually meet with a practitioner or doctor and look further into it to find the root cause.